friends over at PolySeSouvient came out with an open letter. They're worried that their agenda is not being carried out by the Liberals, and they ended up with a full court press. You remember this one?
Yeah, that's right. So I think it was July 19th. The House had risen already for summer barbecue season. All the politicians were gone. And Poly wrote a letter to Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc, begging him to do stuff, but at the same time also kicking him in the shins. But they outlined their grievances with the slow process of kicking in the doors of legal gun owners and confiscating our firearms, completely ignoring the historic highs in gang crime and gang shootings with illegal guns. But there's four main things that they are now demanding of Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc, and that's number one, hurry up and confiscate guns from sport shooters and hunters before an election comes, because then it'll be too late. Number two, write an order in council to ban the guns from failed amendments G4 and G46. You'll remember them from C21, and resurrect CFAC. Number three, consult with them on strengthening magazine restrictions. They want a limit of 5 rounds for all guns, handguns included. They think having 5 for this gun and 10 for that gun is nuts. So it should just be 5 for everything, and create some sort of pre-authorization process for new firearm models. They say that currently new models that comply with the law are actually just circumventing it.
Yeah, compliance is actually a loophole. To these people.
There's a couple of great quotes here. Here they are, poking Dominic LeBlanc in the eye. It says, "We are beginning to suspect that either the Liberal government is not competent enough to deliver on its 9 years of promises to ban assaulty weapons, or that it has abandoned its commitment to do so because it fears further stoking the wrath of the gun lobby."
That's us, by the way.
That's us.
Yeah.
My second favorite quote was this one. "What a devastating legacy it would be for the Liberal Party to have wasted all that public support and bungled all those opportunities at its disposal during its decade-long tenure to implement a comprehensive ban on assaulty weapons in Canada." So yeah, they're really smacking the minister across the face with this. Of course, the press picks it up, rolls it out, and doesn't need any comment from the very people that are affected.
Yeah, the stakeholders, right?
Right.
You know? And that's interesting. It's like all they need to do is send a few emails out, and the Canadian subsidized media is right there to like, oh, we'll make this a story, we'll push it out. Here's the interesting part is that even though a few media outlets published that letter and did some op-eds and got some quotes from them, of course, nobody reached out to all the people having their property taken. But anyway, we already talked about that. But then I guess they didn't get enough attention, because here comes that group, NAWL. NAWL, y'all. I don't know. It's the weirdest, the dumbest acronym ever. But anyway, so they came out, and now they have an open letter, and then they say that they're representing whatever, right? 40 organizations, where we heard that before. But anyway, tell us about that. It's kind of an interesting story too.
Yeah, that's sort of been developing through the day. I saw some news stories were saying, 12 organizations, 22, 31. I don't know. I know that I spoke with an MP today who told me they're all intertwined anyways. So I think if you just open up a whole bunch of organizations, then you can look like you've got broad support for something. So they issued a letter to the Liberal government today saying they need to hurry up and implement some of the measures within C21 in order to address domestic violence. I've got the 4 measures here that they're looking at. They want the measure makes an individual ineligible to hold a firearms license if they are subject to a protection order or have been convicted of an offense involving violence. This one in particular, which obliges a chief firearms officer who has reasonable grounds to suspect that a licensee may have engaged in domestic violence or stalking to revoke that license within 24 hours. So that means they are obliged, it's not an option, they are obliged to revoke, not suspend, not review, but revoke a firearms license if they just have grounds to suspect that somebody did something. I don't know, that's a little testy. Another one which automatically revokes the license of an individual that becomes subject to a protection order and requires them to deliver their guns to a peace officer within 24 hours. And then the brief also calls for new regulatory measures to ensure compliance with the verification process. So now if you want to sell even a non-restricted, you have to call the CFO, verify the other person's license, you get a transfer number, that's the deal. They want more laws to make sure that those laws are actually being followed. I don't know if this is in response to the drastic rise in domestic violence and violence against women that's being studied by the Status of Women Committee in Parliament, but I'm just going to speak freely here with a little bit of experience in domestic violence. I'm not going to get into my own personal story, but I think there's a lot of resources out there that could be made available to women to encourage them to leave and stay gone and proceed with their life, all these measures already exist. These powers already exist. They're already there. They can already use them. So I almost feel like it's hashing up the gun debate again just to maybe cause some interference for a very struggling Liberal government.
Well, and Polly and the rest of these people are getting worried, right? They wanted all this national confiscation program, and it didn't happen, and it's not going to happen. And they're getting worried. Whenever they get worried, they start pillorying the Liberal government, and we won't invite you to our national, day of remembrance, and we'll imply that you're incompetent, and wouldn't it be a shame if you blew this? The Liberals and the NDP and the Bloc Québécois and the Greens, they do this for political reasons. It has nothing to do with public safety, as we said a million times. But it's interesting when it comes to NAWL. I think from the perspective of the gun lobby, as a gun owner that's being affected by all this stuff and that goes out of my way every single day to comply with the law and to live as an example to other gun owners, I think regular gun owners, they don't want people that engage in domestic violence to have access to firearms. We don't want people that shouldn't have access to firearms having easy legal access. That's the meeting you halfway part. But stuff like to revoke someone's license on reasonable suspicion that they may have committed an offense within 24 hours, like that's pretty hasty, especially when you're trying to launch a miniature investigation to find out whether or not that's true. And stuff like that, it all sounds great and it plays politically well. And this NAWL group that depends on government funding to even exist and has for almost forever, we looked into them a little bit, they should know better than this. Because when you have a license revoked, and I think most gun owners might know this, certainly instructors know it, if you ever have your license revoked for any reason, you not only lose your license, but you have to go through the Canadian Firearm Safety course again. You have to reapply for a new license. Like that process can take a year depending on whether or not you have a firearm safety course available wherever you live. Like sometimes there's 6 months waiting period for that, like a waiting list. People like this, they're like, I don't care what the consequences are for people that haven't done anything at all. I just want what I want. And if you disagree with it, you're a misogynist and you're against feminist causes and feminism in the law and stuff. And it's just like, man, it's just a shame that we've lost the ability to have just a reasonable conversation where we think about the other person's position. And what are you really trying to do? You know what? I think I can help you because I want the same thing too. Like, it's just such a strange time. So much propaganda. Let me mention this. I every once in a while go over to the Doctors for Protection from Guns Twitter feed to see what kind of ridiculousness they're up to. And of course, if you start scrolling down their feed, it's just the stupidest thing you've ever seen. But again, it's just everything is an assault weapon. Pierre Poilievre, if he ever gets in, he wants to legalize assault weapons in Canada. Just the language and the propaganda, it's so confrontational. It's so incendiary. They exhibit all these behaviors and then they accuse everyone else of doing that. This is just another example. Like, why would you even ask about things like that? And by the way, how exactly is it that there will be a reduction in violent crime involving firearms and even domestic violence if you change the magazine capacity law from 10 rounds for handguns to 5 rounds? Like, I'd like somebody to sit down and just explain to me why that change in the law needs to be made.
Well, for me, I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn, but I'm speaking as a woman who has a little bit of experience. For me, I think it's disingenuous, if not dangerous, to hide behind a veil of reducing domestic violence to enact measures that have nothing to do with it, right? If a person, male or female, if they are an abuser, a violent abuser, you cannot punish millions of other people for something they haven't done, number one. And number two, focus on that person, getting the other person to safety and focus on punishing that person. Keep them in jail. There's a million things that we could do before trying to strengthen the measures that already exist. All of this stuff exists. I can tell you right now, if you are a woman in a position of domestic violence and you're being abused by somebody and you call 911 and you say, my violent domestic abuser is after me with a firearm right now, you watch and see what the response is. They don't take it lightly. So I think it's just disingenuous. Again, there's a million things I think we could do to empower women to keep themselves safe and stay safe rather than doing this kind of stuff.
It's such a mess.